Hey everyone, my name's Cara. This is day 7 of Vlogstice 2025, and we have 3 candles to open because of the weekend. 13, 14, and 15. Starting with the 13th. Oh, first impression, don't love this one. Again, might smell better when it's being burnt. It's nutty, it's woody kind of. This could also be it's supposed to be a coffee or other type of beverage scent. Is this like eggnog or something? No. I give up, I don't know. Warm gingerbread. Okay, the other thing that I thought smelled like coffee was cookies, so I guess that tracks. Warm gingerbread was 13. 14, blue jar. Okay, this is cleaner smelling. What do I mean by that? Like, I don't know, fresher. It's like maybe mint, eucalyptus, those like lighter, not spicy. It's like fake rain scent. I like this, whatever this is. I'm having a hard time today. Iced berries. The one time that I don't guess berries is the time that it's finally berries. I like that one. I really need to like bring coffee beans up here or something. Tea does not cleanse your scent palette the same way that coffee does. It's also just like a tough time of year to be smelling things. My sinuses are very clogged. Okay, and then 15 is in a white jar. Ooh, okay. This is a very strong, like, baked goods scent. Coconut. There's coconut kind of vibes. And by vibes, I mean scent. Yeah, I'm not gonna... Okay, hot cocoa. How? It smells like coconut. Hot cocoa. Yeah, I sense chocolate. Every time I think that it's chocolate or coffee or another beverage, it's a baked good. And when I think it's a baked good, it's a beverage, is what we're learning here. So today, we had warm gingerbread, iced berries, which I like, and hot cocoa, which is not bad. I didn't like the gingerbread one very much. Not my favorite. At least not smelling it directly. So that's the candles out of the way. How are you all? I went back over the comments from the previous video because it's been a little longer this time than just a day and a half or whatever. And I don't know, there are a lot of things I could talk about today. There's still a few things on my list. I think I'm just gonna stick with the reclaiming topic thread for now because then we get that kind of out of the way and you have the information sooner in this Vlogstice process than later, and then we can talk about other things other times. I do want to mention also though, maybe I'll talk about this more next time, but also maybe I won't. I'm not sure yet how I feel about saying more about it, but I just want to note that like this past week was really tough. This is a time of year that is tough for me, as I've said many times. You know why, but particularly like the grief stuff as we get closer to the anniversary of my Gram's passing. You know, my mom is also still dealing with grief from that, losing her mother. And so I was talking to her a bit last week about that and kind of holding space for her through her continued grief over it. And at that point in the month, I was still very busy working on editing projects and other things. So I took that time out to hold space for her, which worked out because it was early enough that I wasn't personally feeling it yet. And now, like this week, I'm starting to feel it again. And on top of the exhaustion from everything else and just brain fog and the typical seasonal stuff like sinuses, like I've got also physical pain and discomfort and like just so many things piling up at once. So this past week was really tough, sitting with not only that grief, but other types of grief, other types of loss, things that are going on in my friends and loved ones' lives, losses for them, losses of like the way that something was going to go and then something else happened, right? Like those things that are not just deaths, but like loss of a different type. And that's not even touching on things in the wider world. That's just the stuff that's very close to me, that's connected to me more closely in that web of all connections. So I just want to name that there's a lot there. And so that, I guess, briefly is really just the vlog part of this vlog, because that's the part that's about my life right now. The rest of this is also about my life, but not specifically like right now, like slice of time, but I want to talk more about the reclaiming stuff that I do, and also the non-reclaiming stuff that I do, the other things that I offer, stuff that I teach. So I talked about readings last week. I also want to talk a little bit about classes and workshops. So originally, like a few months ago, I finished up my new website, put my new website out there, And I was also promoting a course. It was going to be a 3-month course, and that course had to be canceled because only one person signed up. And that one person was really disappointed that they weren't going to get to do it because nobody else signed up. But I advertised it as a group class where part of the benefit is getting to learn with other people. So I did not feel comfortable only taking on one person in that container because it had been planned for a group. However, there are other things that I do in even smaller groups or one-on-one. I have not offered a lot of those recently for the greater online audience. I do more of that with people that I have worked with more in person. But I have been thinking for a while that I want to do some other smaller group containers or things that don't necessarily have to be a big group. Like they could be one-on-one, but it could also be 2 or 3 people who maybe I'm working with each of them one-on-one, but since there are a few of them, maybe we can also chat all together, right? And kind of touch base with each other. So I'm kind of doing that with a couple of the people that I'm working with in my circle, where they have individual stuff going on that I'm helping guide them through, but they also have a shared space where they could share with one another if they choose to do that. So it's kind of like optional group, but the focus is their personal thing. And I've been thinking for a while about other ways that I want to do things like that. But I started with this other 3-month group situation, and it's based on things that I did in the past. I did my Saturn Returns course a few times in the past. This one was going to be about working with the moon phases because that's something that people have said they wanted for a very long time now. But it wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right place, whatever the case may be. Didn't work out. So I want to do some things that are different than that. Maybe it was the 3-month container that didn't work well. Maybe I just need to do some one-off workshops and classes again first. Or smaller time frame things, or just differently situated things that don't rely on it being a whole group. So like that one person who signed up could sign up to do one-on-one work with me, and it might contain some of the same work, but in a different format, and more personalized because it's one-on-one. So I would arrange for that separately. None of these things are scheduled yet, however, but I will note, if you go on my website, there is a spot now to sign up for my email updates. It used to be an email update interest form just to see if people were interested in it. I got enough response from that I decided, okay, I'm doing an email list. So that has now been transformed slightly from an interest form to a sign-up form. What's your name? What's your email? What are you most interested in hearing about? I'm not going to form different email lists based on what people want to hear about. It's just for me to know, like, the overall group majority really want to hear about this, and the other stuff I might pepper in less frequently because people still want to hear about it, but not as much as the other thing. So it still has that. I've also added a spot for people who specifically want to get reclaiming resources who may not be connected to another reclaiming community. But anyway, if you sign up for the email updates, one of the things that I'm going to be making sure that I let people know there, and also will be posted on my website, so you can just bookmark my website and check it occasionally, is going to be when I am teaching classes, when I'm offering workshops, things like that. So that'll be sent to your email, or it'll be in my list on my website when I get things scheduled. I have a few things in the works right now that are not specifically scheduled, and some of them are going to be reclaiming things. Some of them are just my things. And the main difference between that is if I'm teaching reclaiming core classes, which I'll talk about in a little bit here, those are a specific thing. Those are within reclaiming tradition, and they are co-taught. So I will always be co-teaching that with at least one other teacher. That is part of the model of how reclaiming leadership works. And so if I teach anything that is connected to those things, but I teach it by myself, like I can do that in a one-on-one mentorship, teach somebody something, I can still give you information about what I know, but it would not count as having taken the core class. And that pretty much only matters if you are somebody who is wanting to go through the core classes where certain classes require that you've already done another one as a prerequisite. So those things aren't going to matter for everybody, but that's the main difference. Reclaiming core classes are going to be co-taught. When I'm teaching something on my own, it's my own. It's my own thing. There are a number of things that I've taught before in person that I would like to adapt to online, and most of them are pretty easy to do that. I basically can do them online as they stand. I just need to figure out a schedule. There's other ones that would require a little bit more adaptation or would require you to have things But luckily, I also know a lot of options for how you can kind of make some of the tools and items that you would need based on what you already are likely to have on hand, even if you're not a person who already owns like witchy tools, right? But that's part of it. It's like when I teach things in person that require having items, I often provide those items for use in the class and then I take them back after the fact. Can't do that. If it's an online class, you can't borrow one of my things, so you have to have your own or, the equivalent. But anyway, a lot of times reclaiming classes take place on Zoom, and that's also so we can utilize things like the breakout rooms. But when I do things on my own, I spend a lot of time on Discord, and you can also do video calls and group video calls in Discord. So I have a Discord community that is associated with my monthly supporters. If you support through Patreon or Ko-fi, you're invited to join the Woodland, which is the name of the server for that. There are also people who support me on Patreon or Ko-fi who don't join the Discord and they just support through the platform, and that's great too. But people who join monthly in either of those places can join the same supporter community Discord server. And there's some stuff that I want to start doing in there more regularly for the people who are there. And for other things, I actually have a different server that will be for classes and workshops. So people who sign up for my classes and workshops, you will be invited into a different server where those things will take place. So it's not the same as the monthly supporter one. And like I said, if I'm doing a reclaiming class, those are likely to be done via Zoom, because that's usually how we do it. So I'm working with another teacher. There are other resources available to me through reclaiming, Zoom accounts that I can use, etc. When I'm doing it on my own, it's my own thing. It's a different thing. But one of the things that I've been really thinking about for a while is, as I was saying before, this idea of having a different sort of, maybe a smaller group container or more opportunities for working with people one-on-one. And I think that it's significant that when I started really thinking about this and putting together in my mind, how would this look? What are some of the options I could offer? What might this look like? How might this fit into everything that I do? I started having first 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 or 5 different people now, gradually over that time, have either gotten a reading from me and said something about this in their conversation around what their reading was about, or mentioned it in a comment on YouTube, or in some other way reached out to me and said something about wanting to get back into their spiritual practice or wanting to really get started with their spiritual practice, something that they've always wanted to do but they haven't really started, they don't know how, they'd like some more guidance. And so what clearer sign from the universe can there be for when I'm planning something like this than when people come to me and say, this is the thing I've been looking for. So I want to say there's not concrete scheduling involved with this yet, but I have a lot of thoughts, I have a lot of plans, I have a lot of ideas about how this might look, how this could look. And so if you are interested in something like that, definitely go and sign up for my email list. I'm planning to send out an email to the email list around solstice, so next week, a little less than a week from today when this video is going out. Some people who were already on the initial list from the interest form have already received an email from me at the end of last month. A few more people have joined the email list throughout this month. I have not sent out another email yet, so that'll be going out around winter solstice. So you still have this next week to get on it before the next email goes out. Of course, you can join it at any time and you'll just get whatever the next email is that I send out. But because it's very DIY, I'm doing it all myself. I am not paying for an automated email system of any kind. You will not get an automatic welcome email when you join or anything like that, but you will get the message from filling out the form that your form has been received, and then you will just be on the list for the next email that I send, is how that works. So I'm not paying for an automated thing. It's all DIY, do it yourself, in which case myself. And I will make sure that I mention in that email that if folks are interested in this other type of work, that you reach out to me about that. Or I'll tell you how to reach out to me about that if I have another way of that happening by the time we get there. Right now, it's just the email list sign up. So I want to talk a little bit about reclaiming core classes now, because those are different. And some people might be wondering, like, why do I care about that? If I'm not involved in reclaiming, do I need to care about that? And the answer is, first of all, no, you never need to care about anything. I would love for you to, care about other people and their well-being, just generally. But when it comes to, taking classes, you don't have to care about that. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm here to tell you what I do, so that those of you who are interested have a little more information about that. Okay? So reclaiming is a tradition of witchcraft that I am involved with. And there are many, many classes that people could teach if you go to a camp, if you go to any other type of weekend workshop. There are many classes that reclaiming folks may be teaching on all kinds of magical things. You don't have to be part of reclaiming in order to go to a class about a magical thing. But there are expectations around being in those community spaces. We have community agreements and guidelines about like how we treat each other in those spaces, how we behave, how we show up to those spaces. So there's that. It's like if you're gonna go to a reclaiming class or any other reclaiming event, you're agreeing to operate within reclaiming community for the time that you are there. That doesn't mean that you have to identify as a reclaiming witch or be part of the reclaiming tradition beyond that. But if you're showing up to our spaces, you know, like if you're coming to my house, you respect my house rules. You go to one person's house, they don't care if you keep your shoes on, great. Another person's house, they want you to take your shoes off, you do that because you're respecting the rules of that space. That type of thing. So, I've definitely been in reclaiming spaces with people who do not consider themselves reclaiming as their personal spiritual affiliation, but they enjoy hanging out in the community. And reclaiming is not an exclusive tradition. If you're part of reclaiming community, that doesn't mean you're only part of reclaiming community. There are a lot of people who are a part of a lot of communities. So, that stated, there are a number of classes that have been consented upon by the reclaiming wider tradition community as the core classes. And these are classes that get offered repeatedly in all communities all around the world as much as possible, depending on who is able to teach them, because you have to sort of be trained in order to be able to teach it. So I'm in the process of being able to teach all of those core classes. There are a couple of them that I'm considered already able to teach, and a couple that I'm still in the process of getting fully there. And different communities have a different process for this too. Some communities have a stricter process that takes a lot longer. It depends on where you're from, what's available in your area. But of those 5 classes that are now considered core, 2 of them are somewhat introductory. The one that we consider the introduction class is Elements of Magic. It's an introduction to how reclaiming works as a tradition, how the community that you're taking that class within operates, and maybe a little bit about the history of that individual community. But it's also an introduction to magical practice and working with the elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And you're also learning how to do basics of magic practice and how to do basics of creating and putting on a ritual. So by the time you are done with the Elements of Magic class, you should know a bit about how to work with all of the elements, some other basic practices that you can use to start a personal practice, and you should have an idea of how to create a ritual in a reclaiming-esque style. There are many ways that many traditions make rituals. Reclaiming's basic outline of a ritual is very similar to what I know from solitary Wicca, non-initiatory Wicca. I can't speak for initiatory Wicca if they change up the rituals at all, and many other general neo-pagan rituals that you might tend to see at an open pride event, for example. Similar basic ritual format. We have some differences based on how things are done in reclaiming, and definitely the exact things that we're doing within ritual are quite different to what I've experienced elsewhere, but the basic steps, you're going to learn about grounding, you're going to learn about circle casting, you're going to learn about calling in the elements or invocations, things like that. Elements of Magic is a prerequisite for taking most of the other core classes. And there might also be other classes within the community that, even if they're not a core class, maybe they're doing some advanced practice that they want to make sure before you take that class, you've at least done the basics before. So Elements of Magic is often used as a prerequisite for other classes in general, but especially other core classes. So because Elements is needed for so many other things, it tends to be offered the most frequently because people need it. If you're new coming into the community, you need to do that before you can do many other things. And as someone who's taught this many times, I will say it is meant to be a helpful way to bring you into community. Even if you've been practicing for a long time before, because when I first went to an event and I took Elements of Magic the first time, because that's what's recommended that you do, and nobody's going to force you to do it, but it's recommended, and I highly recommend it because even though I had already been practicing for over a decade, I knew how to cast a circle, I knew how to call the elements, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I learned ways of doing those things from that first class that never would have occurred to me. I learned ways that reclaiming community thinks of things that were different than what I had ever read anywhere else. And I learned things about reclaiming culture and terminology, things that we do in the community that being explicitly taught that through a class makes it so much more welcoming and smoother to just walk into community, as opposed to if you come into this space that has a lot of like terminology you might not be used to, or little practices and things that we do that you see people doing and you're like, what the hell are they doing? And you can always ask and somebody will explain it to you, but you know, some people that can have this result of feeling like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. I don't belong here. And so putting those things specifically in elements of magic is our way of welcoming people in. This is your welcoming committee. Here's what's going on here. And then it just feels easier. So I have experienced times where some people in community have been in community for a couple of years and they still feel disconnected. And when I start talking to them, it's because they don't understand various things that are usually covered in elements of magic. And I would ask them, well, did you take elements of magic? Were you taught this? And it turns out they didn't take it. And it really feels to me that there might always be some things that get missed because it depends on who's teaching it, what the community is, what's going on, and any number of variables. But there are a lot of things I think that are designed to be taught in that introductory class. So even if you are somebody who's been practicing on your own for years and you already know some of these things, you're still going to get a lot out of it because it's not just about those basic practices, but it's also about learning those practices in community. So if you're someone who's been primarily solitary, like I was, it's an introduction to group practice as well, and planning ritual with a group and using consensus process to do it. So there are a lot of benefits to it, honestly, if that's something that you're interested in. And if you feel like you're somebody who wants to do anything beyond that in reclaiming, you're going to want to take elements of magic. So I am planning an online Elements of Magic class for 2026. It is not yet scheduled because I'm trying to work that out with my co-teacher. But my co-teacher is an online friend of mine who I actually originally met through YouTube, and it turns out we were both involved in reclaiming, and so we bonded over that, and we've been friends for years now, and this will be our first time teaching together. We have both taught separately in our individual community spaces, and we are bringing it together finally for the online sphere. There are also other options for taking elements of magic online that are not specifically with me, so I can definitely let people know about those other options, but for sure, if you want to do a class with me, I'm going to let people know about that. I'm going to let you know about that through the email list. I'll probably post it on my other socials, and it will be on my website on the classes and workshops page. So it is not scheduled yet. It is likely going to be in the late spring, early summer Northern Hemisphere. Some people in Reclaiming watch my videos, but most of you, unless you're secretly reclaiming people and you haven't been telling me, which is very possible, I know that the majority of my audience who is learning about this stuff through me, if you haven't taken elements yet, you're not going to take the other things because you need the prerequisite. So that's why I don't tend to mention the other things that I'm teaching, even if I'm teaching online, because you need to have done other things first. Very little in this magical realm is linear, but there are a few things that are a somewhat linear progression. And it's really just for the benefit of your teachers knowing that you've already been taught something else before. So if you go on to that next class with different people and you tell them, I took that class with this person, they're gonna know, okay, I know that person as a teacher. I know that they have covered all the bases, so you should be pretty well set up. We're good to go. Because I've also seen people jump into a class that was more advanced than where they were, hadn't taken elements yet, it was their first time in witchcraft community at all, went to a more advanced class, had no idea what was going on, and the teachers do not have time in their specifically planned class to go back and teach the basics, which is why that person was asked to step out of that class and go and take the elements class that was being offered at the same event. So by no means do you have to take elements of magic with me, but I would love it if any of you who have been watching me for years are interested. I of course would love it if you took a class with me and do something different. But there are also many other opportunities, and I'm not always teaching it. So if it's something where you want to be able to do something else, I will definitely let people know about other options. Especially if they're friends of mine who I also love and want to support through you taking their classes. So along those same lines, last major topic for this video, I want to tell you briefly about that podcast that I've been mentioning, the other big editing project that I have going on, because it's also a reclaiming project. It's called Reclaiming's Spiral Web Podcast, and it's a project that I started planning with a number of people a a couple of years ago now. Someone else had the idea, got a few of us involved at the first Worldwide 2 years ago. And we were planning it for a long time. The first year, we were just kind of figuring out logistics, budget, getting some funding, getting connected within the Reclaiming nonprofit. So the project is actually under the Reclaiming, international heading. And then for the next year, we were working on actually conducting interviews. So what we're doing is interviewing elders of Reclaiming Tradition. And by that, we mean people who have been involved in it for a long time, some of the original members, people who have been teaching for a long time, people who have founded various communities around the world of this tradition. We have already had a number of Reclaiming elders pass. People die, and we no longer get to hear their stories. A lot of Starhawk's books also do not have audiobook versions available. There are rights reasons for that. There's just legal stuff within publishing. And not everybody can read a print book, whether physical or an ebook, in the same way. So a podcast is a mainly audio medium. There is a video component to this one, which is basically how I got involved. As the content editor, I'm editing the video and therefore also the audio. But it's an opportunity to hear people telling their stories out loud in their voices. And hopefully we will continue to do this for multiple seasons. We will talk to more and more people, but for the first one, we've just talked to about a dozen people. So we're not talking to any of the younger folks you might know who are incredibly influential just yet. They'll come later. And we also haven't talked to folks who have been interviewed many, many times, and a lot of their stories are already out there, like Starhawk. She's incredibly busy. Maybe in the future. But for season 1, you're going to hear from a number of folks who, depending on how connected you are to Reclaiming, you may or may not have ever heard their names. But they're very influential in their respective communities. And some of them, if you have been around recent events, you'll know them very well. They're pretty prolific teachers. So I have the great responsibility and great honor of editing all of these things. I'm losing light, so let me adjust here. But here's how this project is going. There's basically 2 major phases. Phase 1 is that I first have to edit each individual interview. So we interviewed each person on their own, and the interviews were about 2 to 3 hours long. Some of that is tech stuff in the background that is getting cut out. You're not gonna hear that. But we had each of them for 2 to 3 hours. And so the first thing I'm doing is editing each of those individual interviews. Those interviews are not the final podcast. They are a step on the way, and they are part of the archives now. But if you are able to financially support the project, you can do that through Patreon. And there are maybe other methods that we're figuring out right now, so there will be more information available. But basically, I'll put a link to the website, which links to all of the other things. If you support the podcast through Patreon, some of that money is going toward our future funding for doing more interviews in the future, digital storage needs, things like that. Any of the costs that we have for the actual creation of the podcast and the storage of these stories. And a portion of that goes to me for my hours of editing work. So if you are able to support as a thank you those individual interviews as I am done editing them, which takes quite a while, those full interviews are going to be shared on the Patreon exclusively for supporters. They're also being shared with the person that we interviewed. They do not have to pay to have their own interview. But, it's a fundraiser basically to have access to these extra things. And quite a bit in advance, because what's happening then is phase 2. The actual final public podcast, what you'll eventually get to watch and or listen to, are going to be episodes that are a patchwork of all of those individual interviews. What I mean by that is we asked everybody the same questions. We also asked everybody some individually personalized questions, but most of the questions we asked everybody was asked the same question. So each episode will have a couple of the questions that we asked, and all the people that we interviewed, I will be pulling out their answer to that question and putting them all together in these episodes. So each episode will be covering a couple of questions depending on the overall length of it, because it depends on how long each person spoke about each question. There might be some episodes that cover 2 or 3 questions and some episodes that really are just 1. I don't know yet because I haven't finished editing them all. But it will be a patchwork, it'll be a collage, it'll be a mixture of everybody's answers to those questions. So instead of it being Episode 1, we talk to this person. Episode 2, we talk to this next person. Those are what's going up as a bonus on the Patreon, but the actual podcast will be hearing from everybody we interviewed all in the same video, just different questions that we asked them throughout. I also have the joy of collaborating with a couple of our other team members to figure out how to present those questions that we asked everybody that were individual to them and their work, because that's also going to depend on how much time is in them. There are a few common threads throughout, like some people talked about witch camps, some people talked about teaching or organizing events, so there's a couple of themes that I'm sensing are forming, but there is also a number of things that we asked people that are completely personal to their perspective and what they've brought to the community, to the tradition, to their teaching style. So it'll be interesting to figure out how we're going to present those things in the final episodes. The bookends of season 1 are also going to be pretty interesting, and I have quite a big role in those as well. The first episode is going to be the podcast team. That is myself and 7 or so other people, depending on who actually wants to be part of speaking in this episode. The first episode will be us giving a little introduction to reclaiming and a little bit of a history of reclaiming based on what is published in Starhawk's books. So kind of here's what you might already know if you read Starhawk's written accounts of these things. Because again, not everybody is able to access written work like that. So this will be us giving sort of an audio summary of that information. And it's also going to be a way that like people who don't know anything about reclaiming yet at all can come into the rest of the podcast and have a little bit of context. And then the final episode of the podcast is actually going to be a ritual that is asynchronous that I get to edit together. What do I mean by that? So throughout the entire past year that we were interviewing people, each interview, we also had them record pieces of what will eventually be a collaborative ritual. So just like doing a normal ritual in community, everybody volunteered for a specific role that they wanted to take on, but these were all recorded and done completely asynchronously, out of order, in different times. And they will be combined to create a final ritual to close out the season. I cannot tell you when these things will be coming out. I have just finished editing the first full interview, and there are a dozen of them. So over the next months, I will be working on finishing those individual interviews, getting some clips that can be posted publicly, so you'll see some little teasers of people saying fun things here and there if you follow the socials for the podcast. But the final episodes, I have no idea when those will be released. I would guess at least a year from now, so I don't know when the final episode will be released, but when it finally happens, I'm very excited for it. Again, it's a lot of work and a lot of responsibility, but also a really great honor to be able to do this work. And use these skills that I've been developing over 15, 16, how many years have I been doing this on YouTube? So getting to use those skills. And I love doing projects like this, where I, piece together clips from different things. This is just one that is at a scale I have never before had the opportunity to work with. So that is exciting, and that is also an idea of the amount of work that I have for another project going on right now, and it could really use more support. Part of that support goes to me for those hours of editing. You can also, of course, support me and my work here directly through my Patreon or Ko-fi. You can also send a one-time tip on Ko-fi, if not a monthly support. You can just send something one time on Ko-fi. Ko-fi is also where you get readings from me, tarot, oracle, year card readings, etc. They're on the Ko-fi shop. I do have a page about my cartomancy philosophy and stuff like that on my website. So if you've never gotten a reading from me before, I do recommend that you read that page on my website before you get a reading, but it's right there on the Ko-fi. Oh, and something else that I wanted to note about the podcast project and any of my other reclaiming stuff, and I will undoubtedly say this again, because this is at the end of this video, and how many people are really here till now. But if you go to the podcast website and you look around, I don't know if the bios page will be up yet, but if it's not, there is a list of contributors' names, and you will not see my name on that list. That is because I use a different name in Reclaiming Community, and I use that name only in Reclaiming Community and in Reclaiming Spaces. And since this is a reclaiming project, I decided to go by that name because that's how people in the reclaiming tradition know me. So here, in this space, and all the rest of the work that I do, my name's Cara. That's the name I use in the world. If you ever see me out in the world, please call me Cara. That is my name. If you take a reclaiming class with me, or you see me at a reclaiming event, I will be going by another name. You are always welcome to call me Cara anywhere that you see me, but I only use that other name in reclaiming spaces. So I do not use that name here. Please do not ever use that name here. Okay, so this is an example of the type of community boundaries, guidelines, and agreements that we may have. People have magical names that might be used only in their coven, or only during a class for a certain weekend. And just like respecting what pronouns people want to use, we also respect the names that they want to go by in different places. And if you're ever unsure, just ask someone, hey, what name are you going by in this space before I call to you out loud? But yeah, that was a huge consideration for me when trying to decide how I was going to approach the project, because the podcast, that is, because this is a reclaiming project. But I, of course, wanted to be able to talk about it with my wider audience, and if any of you were to happen upon the project, you would immediately recognize my voice, my editing style, I hope. And my picture is going to be there for some of it, especially once we get a bio up. So some of you might already know what my reclaiming name is. You've been at reclaiming events with me. You've taken classes with me. Some of you might not know what it is, and I'm not going to say it here, not because it's secret, but because I don't use that name in this space. And if you take reclaiming classes, even if you don't have a magic name already, you are also welcome to try out a different name, but you also don't have to. I went by Cara for my first camp, and a number of the first classes that I took, I just went by Cara because I didn't have this other name yet. I started using this other name in 2021 when I started teaching core classes. I had gotten the name in a personal ritual in 2019, but I kept it only to myself. It was between me and the universe and the deities, until I decided how I wanted to use it. I knew right away that I didn't want to change the name that I use here, that it was not going to be a public name, it was not going to be an all over the internet name, so I didn't know exactly where it was going to be used, and then I decided that it would be a reclaiming only name. So I can talk more about that type of thing in the future, but I did just want to note it, because if you go and read about it and you're like, I don't see Cara's name on here, but they said that they're the editor, I go by a different name there, and please keep the names to the spaces where they exist, okay? And because I'm going to do the same for you. With that said, I have now lost a lot of daylight, and I have to record another video today. Thank you very much for watching and or listening to this video. I will see you next time in just a couple days. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye for now. Happy Vlogstice!